You might think that the narcissist always walks away untouched, that they can hurt, manipulate, and destroy other people's lives, yet still appear fine, still smiling, still successful, still admired. You look at them from afar and wonder, why does life seem to favor those who are so cruel? But the truth isn't on the surface. The truth is they are rotting from within slowly, silently, and beyond repair. A narcissist's collapse doesn't arrive with an explosion. It arrives through silence. It doesn't happen in one day, but in every moment they betray love, deceive the soul, and deny the light within themselves. On the outside, they may still look like winners, but inside, every brick of their ego is cracking. Every layer of the mask begins to crumble under the weight of the lies they built. Because, as Carl Jung once said, what we deny in ourselves appears in the world as fate. Ablu. The fate of the narcissist is the collapse they create with their own hands. No one punishes them, no force pulls them down. It is their own actions, their own choices, their own illusion of power that slowly destroys them from within. And in this video, I will show you exactly that, not through hatred, not through revenge, but through psychological truth, the laws of energy, and the deep justice of the soul. Because in the end, a narcissist is never defeated from the outside, they disintegrate from within. 1. Evidence 1. The invisible beginning of collapse. When they squander real love. Every tragedy of a narcissist begins quietly in how they treat genuine love. When someone comes to them with sincerity, they cannot appreciate it. They don't see the value of someone who chooses to stay, love them, and forgive them. In their mind, love is not about connection, it's a tool for control. They don't love to bond, they love to dominate. When you are gentle, they feel powerful. When you forgive, they think you are weak. When you cry, they feel important. They live off your reactions. That's why they constantly create drama, conflict, or cold silence. Every emotion you express becomes nourishment for their ego. But true love is not an infinite energy source. It runs out. The one who once loved them eventually grows tired. The wounds, the silent treatments, the guilt trips, the fake apologies, they pile up until that heart has nothing left to give. And that's when the narcissist's collapse begins. They lose the one thing they always took for granted: real affection. Not because anyone punished them, but because their own behavior drove everyone away. When they look around, all that remains is emptiness. The one who truly loved them is gone. The new people they seek only bring temporary illusions. They will repeat the same pattern, manipulate, push others away, then feel lonely again until they realize that no one wants to stay anymore. It's not karma in a religious sense, but a psychological law. If you only take and never give, eventually you run out. Carl Jung once said, "What we deny in ourselves appears in the world as fate." When the narcissist denies love, they deny their own humanity. They think they are strong, but in truth they are weakening, losing their ability to feel, to trust, to connect. Each time they hurt a genuine heart, they cut another thread that ties them to their own humanity. Eventually, they may have everything: looks, money, status, but no one real left. No lovers, no friends, no family. And then they fall into the very state their victims once lived in: emptiness, confusion, meaninglessness. That is the true beginning of collapse, not from the outside, but from within. The narcissist is not destroyed by others. They are destroyed by their own coldness. When there is no one left to mirror them, they are forced to face themselves, and that is what they fear most. 2. Evidence 2, betrayed by their own flying monkeys. After losing the people who truly cared, the narcissist doesn't see it as a loss. They believe they're still fine, that power, money, and admiration are enough. So they surround themselves with false allies, flatterers, enablers, or those who simply fear them. These flying monkeys convince them that they're still loved, still right, still the center of everything. But loyalty based on fear never lasts. These people stay not out of love, but out of convenience. As long as the narcissist holds power, they'll hover around. But the moment that power slips, those allies vanish faster than any enemy. That betrayal is a dagger they never expect, not because others turn against them, but because their own illusion collapses. They mistook fear for admiration and opportunists for friends. When that illusion breaks, they lose more than people, they lose the feeling of control that once defined their existence. Carl Jung wrote, "Every ego structure built on illusion carries within it the seed of its own destruction." For the narcissist, the greatest illusion is believing they can control everything. But when the world around them starts to shift, when those who once bowed begin to walk away, when the worship turns into silence, they begin to face their primal fear, invisibility. To a narcissist, not being seen is equivalent to not existing. When they lose their audience, they lose their identity. That's the real panic, not because of betrayal, but because they realize that no one was ever truly there. They invested everything in illusion, and now that illusion collapses, taking their entire false world down with it. From this point, their collapse is no longer emotional, it's systemic. They start losing credibility, losing allies, losing control of public perception, and losing the image they spent a lifetime protecting. The harder they try to appear strong, the more their inner decay shows. The ones who once praised them now fall silent, or worse, turn against them. In that moment, the narcissist begins to taste what they once made others feel: being doubted, isolated, and devalued. The betrayal they inflicted comes full circle, but this time there's no one left to blame. All that remains is themselves. And that marks the beginning of their internal collapse, when every mask falls, and they must finally confront what they've avoided all their lives, the emptiness of their own soul. 3. Evidence 3. When they become enslaved by money. After losing real love and being betrayed by false allies, the narcissist clings to one last illusion that power and wealth will keep them safe. In their mind, money is armor, a tool of control, proof that they've won. They measure their worth by possessions, titles, and the admiration of others. They believe that with enough money, they can buy back love, respect, or even redemption. But that is the deadliest illusion, because money can buy comfort, not peace. It can buy attention, not loyalty. It can buy smiling faces, not genuine eyes. When you use money to replace human connection, you end up in a world where everything, including yourself, has a price tag. For the narcissist, money becomes a religion. They worship material success as a symbol of power, believing it will save them from their deepest fear, the fear of worthlessness. But as Jung said, the shadow becomes larger in proportion to the degree it is denied. The more they reject their soul, the more they cling to external validation to prove they are enough. The material world gives them temporary power, but it cannot fill their spiritual void. When the lights fade and the applause stops, they face a brutal truth. There is no one truly there. Only cold numbers, lifeless objects, and transactional relationships. That's when they start to suffocate within their own success. Money stops being freedom and becomes a chain. To maintain their image, they must keep spending, keep performing, keep controlling. The more they have, the more they fear losing it. The more they fear, the tighter they cling. And in that cycle, they lose the one thing that could have saved them inner peace. As age arrives, health changes, the market shifts, and the spotlight dims, they find themselves with nothing left to hold on to. Money can't buy time. Fame can't buy trust. No fortune can purchase a genuine heart. Too late, they realize they've invested their entire life in something that has been draining their soul all along. On a deeper level, this is not just an economic or social collapse, it is a spiritual collapse. When a person puts all their faith in materialism, they unconsciously declare, "I do not believe in the soul." And when belief in the soul disappears, so does grace. Doors of opportunity close, positive energy fades, and what once came easily begins to crumble. This is not punishment, it is the universe's self-balancing mechanism. Carl Jung emphasized, no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The narcissist does the opposite. They never face the darkness. They just accumulate more false light, fame, wealth, admiration, not realizing that this artificial light is burning their soul from the inside. In the end, they sit in their luxurious home, surrounded by everything they ever desired, and face a terrifying truth. Everything has value except them. They can buy everything but peace. They can control the world, but not their own heart. And that is the third evidence. When money becomes the god, the soul becomes the slave. 4. Evidence 4. When they burn every bridge and self-isolate. A narcissist lives by a recurring formula: attract, devalue, manipulate, discard. They believe they can do this forever, that there will always be someone new to replace you, a fresh supply to exploit. But there's one thing they never account for. People are not an infinite resource. When they burn too many people, too many relationships, they end up standing alone amid the ashes they created. In the beginning, they often show no remorse. They leave easily, even confidently, believing, "I'll always have other options." But as the years pass, a terrifying realization creeps in: no one is truly genuine with them anymore. Those who once loved them are exhausted. Those who once believed them are disappointed. Those who once forgave them now respond only with silence. And the new people who arrive, they come for advantage, not affection. Slowly, the narcissist notices the common denominator in every broken relationship: themselves. But the ego won't allow that admission. Instead of looking inward, they keep blaming the exes, the circumstances, the betrayal of others. They spin a narrative of being a misunderstood victim to avoid facing the truth. They burn down every bridge that connected them to the world. Carl Jung once said, "Nothing isolates a person more than refusing to see their own shadow." That is exactly what happens to the narcissist. They live in a greenhouse of the ego, where every wall is made of mirrors, and in each mirror they see only themselves. At first, they mistake this for power. Over time, it becomes a prison. With no one left to reflect them, they lose the ability to define themselves. They once fed on others' admiration. Now they hear only the echo of their own voice. They once controlled people with silence. Now the world's silence drives them mad. They once thought solitude was strength. Now they learn it is a sentence. And the cruel irony is, they cannot go back. To return, they would have to admit fault. And admitting fault would shatter the mask of omnipotence, which they fear more than death itself. So they keep moving, keep pretending to be strong, keep hunting for new people to fill the void. But each repetition grows weaker than the last, like a flame running out of fuel. A narcissist's isolation doesn't come from the world. It comes from their arrogance. They demand loyalty, but don't know how to trust. They crave love, but fear intimacy. They want to be seen, but won't truly reveal themselves. In the end, they're trapped in an unsolvable paradox. They want to be loved, yet they have destroyed everyone who ever tried to love them. When they look back, they find themselves at a cliff's edge, no one across, no one behind, and no bridge left to return on. This is the symbolic image of true collapse. When the ego has burned every exit, and the soul has nowhere to take shelter. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no one around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." The narcissist embodies this: a soul imprisoned within walls of its own making, surrounded not by enemies, but by unspoken guilt. And that is the fourth piece of evidence. They are not abandoned by the world, they abandon themselves. They are not punished, they self-immolate in the fire of the very ego they worship. 5. Evidence 5. When they begin to pay with their health. For years they live in a state of chronic tension, always controlling, always proving, always performing. They never rest because rest means silence, and silence forces them to hear their own echo. They cannot relax because relaxing means losing the role. Beneath the mask of calm, their nervous system is in constant combat. Elevated cortisol, rapid heartbeat, shallow breath. No body can endure a forever war. Jung said, "What is not made conscious returns as fate." Here, the narcissist's fate is illness. When they deny fear, the body carries it. When they suppress guilt, the stomach tightens. When they swallow rage, the liver is burdened. When they live in falsehood, the immune system weakens. What is not healed in the soul will find expression in the flesh. The body becomes the final spokesperson for a soul strangled too long. Many narcissists harbor chronic issues they never truly acknowledge. Insomnia, digestive disorders, headaches, hypertension, cardiac problems, even cancer. They'll blame stress, work, or what others did to me, but rarely face the root, their way of living, their hatred of vulnerability, their refusal to accept tenderness within themselves. The body cannot withstand prolonged inauthenticity. It rebels like a soul in revolt. Ironically, even when illness arrives, they still try to control. They want to defeat disease by willpower, to win against the body, as if it were an enemy. But the body does not need victory, it needs to be heard. If they refuse to listen, illness becomes a final scream, not to punish, but to force them to stop. They once exhausted others, now they are exhausted. They once drained others' energy, now their life force is depleted. They once kept others awake with anxiety, now they lie awake in emptiness. This is the natural law of reflection. What they sowed in the spirit, they reap in the flesh. Look deeper, and you'll see the first stage of total collapse. When the body can no longer prop up the ego, the mask begins to crack. Small fissures, headaches, fatigue, sleeplessness widen into fractures, spiritual breakdown, depression, psychosis, burnout. The body starts doing what their conscious mind will not. It forces them to face themselves. At the deepest level, this is an act of the soul, not punishment, but a summons. Illness doesn't arrive to destroy them. It exposes what they've denied: fear, hurt, fragility, and the true need to be loved. But most narcissists don't understand the message. They keep running, faking, controlling, until the body has no strength left to resist. 6. Evidence 6. When time and repetition devour them. If in the earlier stages they can conceal fractures with money, status, or temporarily stable health, a day comes when time becomes the enemy they cannot control. No one defeats time, and the narcissist, whose mind clings to an immortal ego, fears this more than anyone. Time doesn't only take youth, it strips away the illusion of omnipotence that sustained them. On the surface, they still try to preserve the perfect image, tending to appearance, flaunting achievements, clinging to the faintest spotlight. Yet the harder they hold on to their old persona, the clearer it becomes that the world is changing and they are not. The tricks that once dazzled now feel outdated. The tactics that once intimidated now only annoy. Their vintage charm no longer works, and they don't understand why. Jung said, "What does not develop degenerates." The narcissist refuses development, change, maturity. They remain frozen at the emotional age where their first wound calcified 8, 12, 17. Outwardly adult, inwardly a hurt child, vying for attention through power, drama, and control. Time, the sternest teacher, exposes this. While others evolve, learn true love, let go and heal, the narcissist remains trapped in the old loop. The same love, the same collapse, the same lies on repeat. They rebuild a revised past to escape the present. But reality doesn't disappear. It waits for them at the end of the road. When no one is left to blame, they indict life, fate, the fact that no one understands me. At a psychological depth, this is stagnation, a soul stuck in yesterday. If you cannot learn from pain, pain absorbs you. If you refuse to face the shadow, you become it. The horror is that they don't realize they're dying by degrees. Life simply feels dull. People seem stupid. The world ungrateful. That isn't philosophy. It's the senility of the soul. With age, the emptiness sharpens. They live on nostalgia, reciting past conquests, boasting of former admirers and domains. But it's only an echo in a cave. No one truly listens. No one believes. And the worst fear lands. They become invisible, not because others hate them, but because their energy no longer reaches anyone. Jung warned, "If you do not confront the darkness within, it returns as fate." The narcissist's fate is to be disciplined by time, not loudly, not theatrically, but with merciless silence. Each year they must strain more to be recognized, shout more to be heard, manufacture more drama to avoid being forgotten. The harder they try, the more the inner void shows. This is the sixth piece of evidence when time, repetition, and the refusal to grow become a silent sentence no one can appeal. They don't fall in a single day. They die a little in every moment as the world moves on, and they remain fixed, trapped in the illusion that they are always right, always special, and never need to change. And that is their final tragedy. Imprisoned in the immortal ego, they worshipped until time, like a faithful mirror, reflects the harsh truth that any power not rooted in the soul will eventually collapse. 7. Evidence 7. When they are abandoned by the universe and lose the grace that once protected them. At a certain point in a narcissist's life, something strange begins to happen. The things that once came easily, opportunities, attention, luck, relationships, money, start to stall. The doors that once opened effortlessly begin to close. The people who were once enchanted by them drift away, and new connections no longer last. They can't explain it, but deep down, an invisible force is moving. The universe has withdrawn its protection. In the earlier stages of life, many narcissists seem to be blessed with unusual gifts: charm, eloquence, emotional manipulation. It's as if the universe equipped them with every tool to learn about power, to see what they would do with it. Instead of using that light to understand themselves and heal, they used it to exploit, deceive, and dominate. And when that choice is repeated too many times, the universe begins to respond not with thunder or disaster, but with a quiet withdrawal of what once flowed easily. Carl Jung once said, "Whoever tries to keep only to the light and avoid their own darkness will be cut off from the source of divine energy." The narcissist is a living example. They want light without honesty, success without integrity, power without responsibility. But light cannot remain in the hands of those who only wish to possess it. When they use the energy of love to manipulate, that very energy begins to turn against them. You can see this withdrawal in the smallest details. Projects that once ran smoothly now fail for trivial reasons. People who once supported them go silent. Promising new relationships crumble for no clear cause. None of it is random. It is the subtle justice of energy, the way every unconscious act eventually finds its way back to its source. At this stage, they begin to complain. Why is everyone turning their back on me? Why is life so unfair? Why does no one understand me anymore? But the truth is, the universe is no longer complicit in their games. When you repeatedly choose deceit, manipulation, and betrayal of trust, you separate yourself from the current of life, the flow where love, creativity, and grace move freely. And once you step out of that flow, energy stops moving. At the spiritual level, this is the desertification of the soul. No more grace, no more lucky coincidences, no more timely saviors. They may still have wealth, power, or influence, but everything starts to feel empty. They eat but taste nothing, succeed but feel no joy, love but feel no aliveness. The universe does not punish them, it simply withdraws the energy they failed to honor. It's harsh, but it's fair. The universe plays no favorites. It only mirrors the energy you emit. When one radiates control, fear, and deceit, they eventually attract situations that force them to confront those very qualities. The narcissist, therefore, begins to live inside their own karmic loop, being deceived, betrayed, isolated, ignored, the same experiences they once inflicted on others. And then, one day, they wake up to a chilling realization. Everything is still there, the house, the possessions, the achievements, but no soul remains beside them. No applause, no audience, no energy left to feed on. This isn't the abandonment of people. It's the withdrawal of the collective soul, of the life force they once exploited. The universe is silent, but that silence is the verdict. Jung called this the divine withdrawal, the retreat of the sacred. When a person chooses the ego over the soul, the divine steps back and lets them face the consequences, not to punish, but to teach them the only lesson that can save them: awareness. In the end, after all the illusions of power, wealth, love, and control, the narcissist must face the one thing they fear most: themselves. Everything external they once clung to: the admiring gazes, the applause, the dramatic romances, the status, the riches, all eventually fade away. Not because the world is unfair, but because the universe always seeks balance. Anything built on illusion will collapse when truth appears. And the truth is this: they were never truly strong. What they called power was merely a mask to hide their fragility. What they called love was only the fear of abandonment disguised as possession. What they called success was simply an escape from the emptiness of their own soul. And when all of that dissolves, they are left facing the only thing that remains: the darkness within. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Narcissists never dare to walk that path. They fear the dark, so they project it outward, turning others into mirrors that reflect their own hidden terror. Yet that very act keeps them imprisoned in an endless night, because you can only escape the dark when you stop running from it. And here lies the most ironic and beautiful truth. Justice does not require revenge. No one needs to destroy them. They destroy themselves through their refusal to change. Every lie, every manipulation, every counterfeit love story is another brick they lay in the wall, separating them from their own soul. Eventually, that wall becomes so thick that they can no longer hear the pulse of life, no longer feel love, no longer see the light. That is the deepest punishment: not the loss of others, but the loss of connection with one's own being. Meanwhile, the one they once wounded begins to understand there is no need for vengeance, no need to prove, no need to hope for their remorse. Because when you awaken, when you no longer react, when you no longer let them define your worth, you have already won. That victory is silent, unseen, yet carries the power of a rebirth. That is when you realize that true justice is not them suffering, it is you being at peace. It is not their collapse, it is your stability. It is not their loss, it is your return to yourself. For when you become conscious, when you reclaim your energy, when you step out of the game, your entire inner world transforms. And in that place, you no longer look at them with hatred, but with understanding. You see the lost child within them, but you no longer wish to save it. You simply smile, close the door, and move on. Because now you know kindness is no longer weakness, but light with boundaries. Love is no longer sacrifice, but freedom. And silence is no longer fear, but the declaration of a soul that has awakened. That is the final justice of the universe. No one has to lose for you to win. You only need to stop losing yourself.